And there are components in here that are going to drive curriculum like I just showed you. Somebody just asked me if I could make copies of some of the pages in here, and I said, I'm afraid I'd probably have a lawsuit for distributing pornography. I'm sorry, this is not something that we should be dictating to our school districts, and it is not an opt-out. They must do this.
The member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, before I go on, I'd like to request a roll call, please.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, my amendment would actually remove this very contentious section from the bill, the section that would mandate for our school districts, both elementary and secondary schools, to have comprehensive sex education. I've heard from the other side that this bill is all about local control and that this is an assault on school districts, that we would not trust them. Members, this is an assault on the local control of school districts. We are mandating, with a must, the types of things that should be taught for sex education. And not just from kindergarten on up, but in our elementary schools, we now have VPK, which is included as part of elementary school. So this would be preschool through 12th grade. This is not only an assault on the local control of our elected school board members and school districts to determine what is taught and when is taught when it comes to sex education. It's also an assault on parents. Because as we have heard here, first of all, parents are our #1 educators, and I've always believed that as a teacher. And I've told my parents that, the parents of my students. This basically says government knows best. Government's going to pick one-size-fits-all sex education from pre-K all the way up to the 12th grade. That is not right. Not when it involves a sensitive subject, a very personal subject that parents deserve to teach their children. Or they can choose to hand that off to school board members who can do it, but it's their choice at the local level. You know, we constantly, or not constantly, but sometimes lament that huge giant businesses like Google and Amazon or the big box stores are closing out our small mom and pop stores in our communities. And we could debate the pros and cons of those kinds of big stores. But here's government coming in to be a big box educator on sex education. I don't think sex education deserves to be big box education. It should be driven by the local parents and the local school boards. One-size-fits-all government-mandated sex education is really one-size-fits-nobody. It's a sensitive subject. It should be left up to local control as to what to teach and how to teach it. So my amendment would strip this portion out and revert back to what we've had before, which basically says school districts need to develop health education, sex education, but it leaves it up to the districts and the parents to decide. You know, I was curious. I know that Planned Parenthood has had a hand in developing this provision. We know that because it's coming verbatim, as Representative Scott showed, and is written in the bill. It is also written in the bill that the Department of Education would develop model sex education curriculum for elementary and secondary schools. So I thought, well, since Planned Parenthood is driving this, and they're the ones that are promoting this comprehensive sex education for both elementary and secondary, I should go on their site and see what kind of curriculum they suggest, because you can bet that they're going to be part of developing the state curriculum, model curriculum, or different samples that our districts can choose from. So I went to Planned Parenthood's website, and I found a book that they endorse, and it's called It's Perfectly Normal. And this is their ideal for comprehensive sex education. I won't hold it up because it'd probably be considered a prop, but I'll keep it right here because I'd like to refer to it a little bit. If parents understood that this is what is included in comprehensive sex education, I don't believe the survey would have been the same results as it is here on this handout we got from Representative Lippert. Of course, the majority of parents, if they're going to hear, well, should we have comprehensive sex education, they're thinking, all right, that's the biology of sex education. Yep, that should be taught in schools. We can teach biology. They don't understand that it's this kind of thing. Members, I'd love to page through this and show you some photos, but I can't, because what's in here would be considered pornography anywhere else outside of this. And if you'd like to see it afterwards, come and see me, because it is pornography. And it says right here it's for ages 10 and up. In this, it teaches a number of types of sex, and I won't name those because it wouldn't be appropriate for the decorum of the floor, and many other things that we would be appalled with. And this is the kind of thing that's going to get driven down, not even just to kindergarten, but to preschool. I just think this is an affront to school districts. It's an affront to parents. Again, it's a very personal subject, and it should be left up to parents in local school districts on exactly what they want to teach and how they want to teach it. Things like this, when government gets involved, it becomes a value-less education. And sex education of all things should never be value-less, or we're going to get more of the things that we're seeing in society today, more STDs, more of many things that we don't want to see in the area of sex ed. It normalizes things that parents, not every parent believes should be normalized. Members, I don't believe that what we're doing here is called sex education, because when I look at sample curriculums like this isn't sex education, this is sex grooming. And we should not be involved in this as a state. I've heard, well, it's developmentally appropriate. The bill says that we should have developmentally appropriate education for sex education. Well, not every parent agrees that certain things should be driven down to the kindergarten or preschool level for sex ed. I would bet the majority don't. So members, I would ask support for this amendment. And again, I believe I asked for a roll call, because this should be left up to our local school boards, elected members of the school boards. This should be left up to our parents. And finally, I actually spoke to some school board members as well as district superintendents about this. And I asked their thoughts. Would you want a mandate? None of them said that they wanted a mandate on this. One of the superintendents I spoke to said, you're going to put me between a rock and a hard place with my parents, because there are many parents who are going to be upset about this, who find out by accident that it's being included in their child's education. So let's bring this back to local control, real local control, and not mandate comprehensive sex education on our districts and on our parents, but allow them to choose what they want to do.
Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Lippert yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lippert, in your bill, now you mentioned that school districts can opt out of the curriculum, which is true, but are they allowed to opt out of the mandate? There's a number of mandates here on what needs to be taught. Are they allowed to opt out of that as well?
Representative Lippert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So school districts can opt out of the model program and provide assurance to the Department of Education on the instruction that they are providing.
Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Lippert. So that is correct. They are not able to opt out of the mandate, so they must teach the components that this bill dictates. If we were allowing districts and school boards and parents the freedom to choose what they want to teach and be in control, then this shouldn't be as a must. It should be listed as a may, but it is listed as a must. And there are components in here that are going to drive curriculum, like I just showed you. Somebody just asked me if I could make copies of some of the pages in here, and I said I'm afraid I'd probably have a lawsuit for distributing pornography. I'm sorry, this is not something that we should be dictating to our school districts, and it is not an opt-out. They must do this.